Occasionally, you want to put on your glasses because it's time to get down to business and have a serious talk. And you want to be able to take off those glasses at key moments and gesture with them to make a point. These are actually just reading glasses, and they're kind of making everything around me blurry, so I am going to get rid of the glasses. Welcome to the Green Room. I'm Bob Bledsoe. We are going to have a serious talk today, and this is no time for nonsense from my brother, who is behind the camera. Hey, look what I have! I'm using technology to create hilarious fart sounds. It's a phone and a fart machine. Kent, I'm trying to do a professional thing here today. Can we? Sorry. Thank you. Like I said, serious talk, because... Sorry, that one was loud. You know what? I'll just turn my phone off. Probably a good idea. Apologies, folks. Normally, I don't get into drama at all in my life, and especially online. I usually just see what's online and then go about my day. But today, we're going to talk about 3 things that I'm seeing happen with snake keepers or reptile keepers that I would like to say something about. First, and this is not one of the 3 things, but since we're being serious here, I want to wish Brian Barczyk all the best. He is one of the nicest guys in the reptile community and has inspired millions of people throughout his years in the industry. Cancer is awful, and my thoughts are with him. I think the best thing that we can do right now for Brian is to surround him with positivity from the reptile community. Now to the top problems that I see right now in this moment with reptile keepers. The first one has to do with some arguing that I see online about various enclosures and ways to keep your snake. And I could say a million things about this, but it kind of boils down to one thing a lot of times, and that is breeders versus keepers. We always try to come at something from our own perspective and our own situation in our life. But a keeper that has, let's say, 4 or 5 snakes in big enriched enclosures might see a breeder's rack system and go, oh my gosh, those snakes need to be in 4x2x2 enriched enclosures. What is that guy even doing? But they're failing to take into account what that would take, time-wise and space-wise, for a breeder to have that, and what it takes to have a viable breeding operation. They're also failing to acknowledge the healthy and thriving animals that live in those tubs. And a breeder might look at a keeper and go, well, of course your snake has an RI. You're keeping it in a fish tank with so much clutter that it's impossible to keep clean. If you kept your snake in a rack, you'd have healthy snakes. What the breeder is failing to acknowledge is that people with a pet snake keep their animals very differently. And there are ways to do it successfully, and there are ways to do it unsuccessfully. If you just want to have a pet snake, you don't want it in a tub. If you want to have 5 pet snakes, you probably don't want them in a tub. It's not, if you only have 5 pet snakes, you don't go and buy a 5-stack rack. You buy 5 enclosures and set out space in your house for it. It's a very different situation than a breeding operation. So as I always say, there are multiple ways to successfully keep snakes. And if you just have a handful of snakes, a big enriched enclosure is a really great way to go if your snake is okay with that. Breeders have to keep their snakes differently. Chances are, if you have a snake, it probably came from one of these breeders. To make sure that all the snakes in the breeding operation have a perfect temperature and humidity scenario, and to make sure that they can all be quickly and easily cleaned, they have to be kept differently than a pet snake at home. They can't be tinkering with every enclosure every day, and they can't be taking up all the space in their house with enclosures. So if you're a pet keeper, you either limit the number of snakes that you have so that you can still keep them in really nice enclosures and keep them as a pet. And if you're a breeder, you have to figure out how you're going to keep them safely and sanitarily and give them everything that they need. A lot of people are, I think, like me, which is kind of in between the two. I have my breeding operation at my house, and all of these animals are still my pets. I don't have hundreds of animals. I have less than 30 right now. And so I keep a lot of the animals in tubs, in racks, but they're enriched because I have the time to do that. If I had hundreds of animals, I wouldn't be able to do the enrichment. So I keep them enriched, and for the snakes who like to come out and roam around, they get a chance to do that. And so they live very enriched lives, but they're not all in massive enclosures. And I think there's a lot of breeders in that situation too that are looking to maybe do a little bit more with their snakes than just paper in a water dish. And they have the ability to because they're not a massive breeder and they're doing it all from home. So they can put a little bit more effort into it that way. And also, I've done videos on this, but the big point being you don't have to do everything. You don't have to make a major change. You can add a little bit of enrichment. You know, just do what you're comfortable with doing, you know, and what makes you feel good about the snakes. I think most of these arguments actually stem from keepers who are not confident in the way they keep their animals. So when they see somebody keeping snakes differently, they feel attacked. And then they feel like they need to attack back. So when judgment hasn't even been passed on that person at all, they're just feeling a little bit wrong about it for some reason. And so all of a sudden you see them attacking anybody that keeps their animals a little bit differently. That, I think, might be the root of the problem. So do what you can to make yourself feel good about how you keep your animals based on your knowledge and your experience. And then you don't need to fight with anybody else. So we're going to get to number 2, and I'm trying to have a serious talk here, but since Kent ruined it already, let's see if we have a Kent's Corner. Good one. Gross. Short but sweet. Is that all it is, Kent?
Yeah, but there's only 18 minutes left.
No, Kent, wrap it up.
Dang it! The one that I found around minute 12 is loud. Thank you for watching Kent's Corner.
Number 2 is not really controversial, I guess, but it is kind of a breeder versus keeper thing that's good to keep in mind. If you are someone who's looking for a pet ball python specifically, figure out what morphs you like and what you think you want to go for, and then don't focus on morph as much anymore. There's a massive focus on just morphs across YouTube. And when you start doing your research on ball pythons, you're going to come across all that content, which is somebody going, hey, I just had a clutch and we got this one, and look at how this one reacts with this, and I didn't get my odds, but maybe next year, which are fine. Those videos are fine, but understand that those are made for breeders. They're not made as much for pet keepers. Breeders are interested in that because they are focused on the morph. I've made those videos before too, and I have videos that are just dedicated to genetics in ball pythons. So those videos are fine, but they are more for breeders than keepers. So I think that sometimes new keepers have a tendency to think that morph is the most important thing when deciding on your ball python. But the fact is that once you've decided on the morph that you want and you end up getting your snake, the paint job that's on your snake is going to matter way less in the 30 plus years that your snake is going to live than its personality, its setup, all that kind of stuff. Because a year down the road, when you go to show your friend your ball python, you're going to pull out the snake and go, here's this lovely girl, or here's this cranky boy. You're not going to talk about morphs as much. You're not going to pull them out and go, here's my inchy pied shoelace double basket weaver. Like, they don't care. They just don't care. And that is something that is hard to fathom after you've watched 100 videos of people going, look at this one, and look at this one, and here's another. Look at this whole clutch of these. These are crazy. You know, nobody cares after you get your snake. So get something that looks good to you. But beyond that, have I asked the breeder all the questions about that individual snake that makes me feel good about getting that individual snake? Rather than just going, hey, is this a pied with green eyes? Cool, I'll take it. When I bought this mandolin a number of years ago, what it looked like was important to me, and I had to make those decisions. But once I had made those decisions, I made sure that I was getting the right instrument for the way it feels, the way it sounds. If somebody came into my house and saw this hanging on the wall, and they were like, hey, what's that all about? I wouldn't pull it down and go, oh, this is my J. Bouvier mandolin with a Sitka spruce top and maple back and sides. I've got actual real bone corners, and it's got metal string. Like, they don't care. They just want to hear it. I'm glad it's not ugly, but it really doesn't matter to me at this point. This is an instrument that plays nicely, sounds the way I want it to sound, and I love it. So obviously the important question is, what kind of snake do you want? And then figure out what color you generally like. Then beyond that, there's some really important things like, how are you going to set up the snake? Who are you going to buy from? Do you trust your breeder? Can they tell you about certain individuals and answer all your questions? Things like that, because this is a snake that you're going to have for 25, 30, 35 years, hopefully. And the paint job just isn't going to matter as much. So again, those YouTube videos that focus on morph are great. They're really cool to watch, but they should not be your number one thing when you're trying to choose your snake. Breeders obviously are different. They have to choose based on what they're trying to make. But for a pet keeper, not as important. The third one is definitely going to cover some controversy. But first, I want to acknowledge the horde of keepers over on Patreon. And I did this very awkwardly because I just pulled Stella out of her cage. And I'm going to try to do this with this crazy snake who never stops moving. Like I said, these are the people over on patreon.com/greenroompythons, known as the Horde of Keepers. They get exclusive merch and exclusive videos from me and exclusive, live streams, I guess, stuff like that. And very importantly, they keep this channel going. Stella, come on. The top of my head is Stella's favorite spot, so I guess if she hangs out here for a little bit, we'll be okay. Oh, Stella, come on. Here's these folks. Oh man, I hope this is on screen. I can't see. I'm trying to... Thanks so much to the Horde of Keepers for their help. And thanks so much to Black Box Cages, Lane Labs, where you can get frozen rodents, and Gray Family Snakes for their sponsorship of the channel. Stella, can you not make my beard look weird? Thanks. Infighting in the reptile community often leads to controversy, but it also leads to new keepers leaving the community, basically, because of bad experiences. And that's really unfortunate. So I just want to say a few things that come to mind when I see infighting online in the reptile community. These are not things that I would ever go online and say. I would never jump in the middle of these, but these are just a few of my thoughts. First, if someone comes across to you as rude or abrasive, maybe extremely rude, it might be that that's how that random person on the internet has learned to relate to people in the world. It's probably not a way that serves them very well, but some people just relate that way, and this is a random faceless person on the internet. Now, is that also how you relate to people in the world? If so, go ahead and fire back at them. But if not, if that's not how you walk through life and relate to people, you don't have to match that person's level of communication skills, which I think is oftentimes the problem. You get one person that's super rude, or actually what usually happens is one person that's slightly rude, and the next person not only wants to match that level of communication, but wants to up it a little bit, and they get even ruder. And then that person jumps in and goes up. So they're trying to match and one-up each other on how ineffective they can be at communicating with other people. And that's not helpful for anyone. Hey, where are you going? Let's say that you're walking down the train tracks and a hobo who's out of his mind comes running up to you and starts screaming in your face. You're not going to scream back in their face. You're probably going to get away, but you're not going to try to match his level of communication skills, right? So there's no reason to do that with some faceless person on the internet. There's also nothing wrong with letting someone have the last word. That doesn't mean that they won the argument. You can just be done because you're a busy person and you're going about your day. And you don't even have to tell that person that you're done. Don't even have to make that comment. You can just be done. I think it's important to remind ourselves that we are human beings on Earth for not a very long period of time, and we might not have time to respond to everyone on the internet. You just don't have to respond. Or if you do choose to respond, I like to respond to comments like that if I feel the need to respond. I figure out what they're actually commenting. Like if they weren't being super rude, if they were just being kind, what is it that they're saying? And I'm going to respond to what they're saying, And I'm going to respond to it as though they were kind when they said it. I'm just ignoring all the fluff, all the wrapping paper that they added to that. If they're trying to insult me or whatever, I'm just not even going to acknowledge that. So you make your response as though they were kind. You do it in a kind way if that's how you relate to people. And then they'll back down. They'll probably apologize. If they don't back down, that's okay. You can give them the last word, and you don't have to continue a communication with that person. I also think it's important to keep in mind, and this has nothing to do with reptiles, if somebody comes at you like that, that's because that person is hurting. That's a person that's not feeling good about themselves, who knows what's going on immediately in their life or what's gone on for years in their life. That's just a person who is hurting, and they probably need positivity more than anybody else. So if you can not only respond to them in a kind manner, but even compliment them while doing it, maybe they've got something on their page or something that you can throw a compliment in, that might change that person's outlook for an hour, for a day, for a minute. It might make a difference, and they probably will never thank you for it or anything like that, but you've just made a positive difference in somebody's life who is hurting. So there's my knockoff Gary V TED Talk for the day. Thanks for indulging me. But I just see these comments on Facebook and I go, who are these people that are doing this? Like, are these children? Maybe they're children. I don't know. We can relate to each other better though. Keep in mind that the only thing that we have in common with one another is that we care about reptiles. That's it. Otherwise, it's people from all different walks of life, all different cultures. Just it's good to be sensitive to that these are not necessarily people that would be in your general friend circle or group that kind of relates to one another the same way. To make up for that last part that was more about human behavior than anything else, check out this video because it's got a lot of snakes in it. Stella, why do it looks so weird when you do that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.